Okay, well, this all stuff is I learned after I wrote the pledge case. So anyhow, as I'm going through with the pledge case, let's get back there. So I go and I lose at the district court level, and then it goes to the Court of Appeals, and I have no idea how you go to a Court of Appeals. I don't know what's going on there. Turns out they have a clock. You get 20 minutes to speak. Each side gets 20 minutes. I don't need this stuff. I find this out. And you go in this, you get a 3-judge panel. Out of the many judges in the circuit, our circuit has about 25 or 30 judges. You get 3. And so, there's one judge that I knew about, Reinhardt, which some of you may know about. His wife is the president of some ACLU organization. And he clearly, you could read through decisions of the judges, and I went through and started reading some of them. And his opinions in the past, there was no doubt that if I got him, he'd be on my side. And so I was praying every night. And sure enough, I get him. It's about, you figure, you get 3 judges and there's 30 judges and thing, that's a 10% chance. That was pretty cool. So I get him, so I figure, okay, I got 1 now, and I got to get 1 more. And I don't know what the other 2 are. And so you go to the oral argument, and standing there, and you just start talking. And the 2 other judges, one was Judge Fernandez and the other was Judge Goodwin. And as I'm talking in the middle of my spiel at one point, Judge Goodwin says, you know, I remember this when they put this in. I was around in 1954. I don't know how they were allowed to do that. Reinhardt Goodwin, I'm in. I knew I had. So I knew I was going to win. It was a pretty cool case. So you go, and so I won there. And then, as I said before, since I won that case, if I had lost, then I would have asked the Supreme Court to hear it. They would have said, forget it, 99% chance you don't have it, and I never would have gotten hurt. But because I won, it went to the Supreme Court. And for reasons we won't get into today, I lost it. Okay? But I will say that when Mel said, I brought the case on behalf of my daughter, that's not quite true. Okay? I brought the case on behalf of myself. If you read my complaint, I said, I, an American citizen, have a right. I have a Pledge of Allegiance that doesn't say some religious stuff that I disagree with. That's good word stuff. So I said, I have that right. I said, I have a whole writ. I go to my daughter's, to the board meetings, the school board meetings. They start off every session with a Pledge of Allegiance. I am in that room when they're pledging allegiance to God. I said, what is this stuff? I have a right. Okay, well, they have this game they play called standing. Right? In case you may have heard of it. Standing is this idea that if you are not personally affected by something, then you don't have a right to bring a case. So if tomorrow Congress passes a law and says all Muslims have to face Mecca 4 times a day whenever they go, and it's a day to vote or whatever it is. Okay, I say, what a ridiculous, stupid law. That's outrageous. It's a violation of the Constitution. You can't do that. And I go to court, they'll throw it out because I don't have standing. It doesn't affect me. I'm not a Muslim. I don't pray to Allah. Okay? So you have to have standing. It has to affect you personally. Well, clearly, when I go to a school board meeting and I'm standing there and they're making me pledge allegiance under God, that affects me personally. And I think I have standing on that ground. I have standing on the ground that I have a Pledge of Allegiance I see at other times. I have a standing for a whole bunch of reasons. I said also I'm a father. I want to run for office. I can't run for office because you keep telling everybody in America that I'm a second-class citizen. That one, that's iffy, so I don't mind not losing on that one. And then they also said I'm a father. My kid's about to go to school. And I want to make sure she doesn't say under God every morning in the classrooms, every single day, 2,000 times over her career. She's going to be told, we are a nation under God. So these are impressionable children. I don't want you to do that. So the Court of Appeals focused on that. They said, okay, that's the reason you have standing because you're a parent. That's good enough. We don't have to worry about this other stuff with you in the board meetings and stuff. And that's, so it wasn't me who said this was made the main thing my daughter. It was the court when they ruled on this case. So just bear that in mind. And I brought it mostly, I did name her as a defendant. She was unnamed actually. She has a different last name. And I was concerned about, when I first brought this, I'm not anymore, but I was concerned because somebody is going to shoot me or something or her. So I didn't want her name in this. And so she was just, I said, shall we name me? And all I said is she has a right to go to school without having any sort of indoctrination from the government, period. That's it. But for the most part, it was my case. And whenever I was interviewed by the media, I said, they'd ask about her. I said, it's not her case, it's my case. She's a great kid, that's it. So just want that clear. So I brought the case, went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, because of custody issues, I don't have standing. It was total poppycock. Outrageous. It was written by Justice Stevens, who had just written an opinion saying, hey, we shouldn't use standing to knock people out of the box when they're here. And then he went and did it himself. It was very extraordinary because the people who usually say that you don't have standing, Justices Thomas, Rehnquist, and O'Connor, they're all the ones who said I did have standing. I lost 5-3 on the standing issue. And then the ones who usually say we should be liberal with standing and say anybody, they all said no, I didn't have standing. It was a complete reversal. Because I think the reason was because they didn't want, well, it's pretty clear they didn't want to decide the issue. They try to stay away from issues on the Constitution if they can, especially something that's as unpopular as this. And I think they know, I think everybody knows that I'm right. This isn't a question of issues. And Justice Alito, when he was having his hearings this year, he said, you know, he was talking, they were actually talking about the pledge case. He says, well, often there's conflicting freedoms, and that makes the case difficult. Well, there's no conflicting freedom here. Yeah, sometimes there are. You know, the case where they had the fellow up in Washington State who wanted to get a grant to go and use it at a theology college, and they wouldn't let him, but they let anybody else use it for other things. There's a conflicting freedom. You know, your right to get a grant from the government. Right? That's a tough case. What's the conflicting freedom here? You don't have a right to use the government to get your religious view in the midst of our society. That's exactly why we have an establishment clause. So it's not like you have the right to do this. You have no right. We specifically don't have that right. The only right you have is to not have government take a position in terms of religion. So this is a real easy case. I think everybody knew that, but the judges said no, justices said no, and threw it out because they didn't want to hear it. So it came out as soon as they threw it out. I said, great. Now I'm more experienced. Now I know all the stuff that I just told you about. I'm going to be much better. I'm going to get somebody else to do it. So I got somebody else and did it. Filed the case immediately, and that case went back, and I filed it in January of '05, so just a little over a year ago. I went to the district court. The district court ruled that he was still bound by the opinion of the Ninth Circuit, because remember, it was reversed on standing grounds. The Supreme Court never said anything about the merits decision of the Establishment Clause in terms of what they said that it violates the Constitution. So he said, I'm still bound by what they said. Newdow, you win, which is a bad thing. You don't want to win. Remember that Gala case, right? What happens is when you're the winner, right, you get to, when you're the loser, sorry, you get to bring the first brief, okay, in the Court of Appeals. You lose at the district court, you were the appellant, you're the person who goes to the Court of Appeals. You say, hey, I want to appeal, and you file a brief. Then they file a brief against you. You get 14,000 words per brief, and then you get the last brief. You get another 7,000 words. It's great to lose in the district court. You don't want to win there. You know, sometimes you do want to win if there's a factual issue, because the Court of Appeals has to go with whatever the lower court says in terms of facts. When it's just a question of law, like this case, then the Court of Appeals doesn't care what the lower court says. It means nothing. That Court of Appeals is going to rule on its own. And so it's a great advantage to lose in the lower court and then come back. And you probably, some of you may have heard that I just brought the Ungodly Trust case, and I lost at the district court. And everybody said, oh, Newdow, terrible, the other side. You lost, crushing blow. It's the best thing in the world that could have happened. I'm thrilled that I lost, because now I'm going to be the appellant. I get the first brief, they get a brief back, and I get the last brief. I get the extra 50% of the words, and I get the first and last word. So it was a great thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So anyhow, so I brought the Pledge of Allegiance case back, one in the district court, and that's on appeal right now. As a matter of fact, right this very minute, as soon as I leave here, I'll be back and writing my brief. The governmental defendants filed since they lost, now they're the appellants. I'm in the bad position here. They filed their appellant's brief just at the beginning of June. My brief in response is due on July 3rd. They'll have a reply brief. They get the advantages now. And then they'll hang around the Court of Appeals. They wait about 9 months before they tell you, okay, we'll have oral argument. And you go and you have the oral argument. And then about 4 months or so after that, they'll come out. So we're talking about, it's not going to be till about this time next year until we hear from the Ninth Circuit on that case again, somewhere around there. So that's the Pledge of Allegiance case. Anyone have any questions on that before I continue on the other case?
So the Supreme Court, they threw it out. The technicality was
that I don't have standing. Right. It was really bogus, because the whole thing was, there's two types of standing. There's what's called Article 3 standing. Remember, we have a Constitution, the first 3 articles, legislative, executive, and judicial branch. In Article 3, the judicial branch, it says that the courts can only hear cases and controversies. And the Supreme Court, talk about judicial activism. A long time ago, they said, oh, well, what's a case or controversy? It seems to me like this is a case or controversy by any definition, not by the Supreme Court's definition. They say case or controversy requires the standing things. Right? So if you don't have Article 3 standing, then the judiciary, no court has power to even hear this case. Okay? So if they had said that I didn't have Article 3 standing, then there would have been no question. All of the stuff the Ninth Circuit did was poop, it doesn't matter for beans, and the lower court would not have said, okay, I have to follow the Ninth Circuit.